Mick Foley. There's the report card. Let's give the grades. Oh, there's actually an extra one, personality. Okay, I don't know the difference between charisma and personality, but let's start with work rate.
Work rate, I would give a B, only in the sense that, to me, work rate in my mind, and I don't know what the definition of somebody else's would be the pace at which the match could be executed, not necessarily, some people might argue, well, it's if the definition of work rate is quality of the match, then I would say Mick is certainly an A+, in the sense that he gives a very good accounting for that kind of a character. Promos, A+. Charisma, A. And personality, A+. I mean, across the board, this character it's not coincidental. This character has become one of the most beloved characters and respected characters of the last quarter century.
Very good. Shawn Michaels.
Work rate, A+. Promos, C+. Charisma, A. Personality, D. Enough said.
Ric Flair.
Woo! The work rate, A. And I would say A+, except that for those of us that worked with these guys and were in the dressing room watching them, Bobby Eaton was far and away above a better worker, pure worker night to night, because he would call fresh spots every night. Flair would go through the routines and litany. So A, because the very good worker, and the matches were always entertaining, but Bobby was just a notch above. Promos, A+. Charisma, A+. Personality, A+. It's, again, I mean, I can respect the guy and what he was and why he was an icon in wrestling, or is an icon.
Steve Austin.
Work rate, same thing, A+. Promos, for me personally, they didn't come off as promos. Like it was, and I think that was a good thing about them, is it came across more as a hard ass speaking his mind as opposed to a wrestling promo. And because of that, I'll give him an A. I'm more traditional in the sense I like the wrestling promo, but extraordinarily effective at delivering the message of what he wanted to give. Charisma, A+. Personality, a little bit prickly, I would say. A-, just because it was a little bit prickly of a character. It's that character can only work as a babyface, provided that the company did all the right things, feed the Vince McMahon suit and everything else, because let's face it, he comes across as a prick as a character, but it only works because the foil of Vince McMahon and whatever else.
Gotcha. Jericho.
Work rate, A. Promos, I'm going to say A-, only because again, what I said about Austin a second ago, Chris came across almost in a conversational way, which to me doesn't translate to a wrestling promo. I mean, the stuff that he said, everything Chris said, he always packed the right nuances and things into his promos. But I mean, that's me personally. Mm-hmm. Charisma, A+, in a very different sort of way. If I would put him in, if take 100 wrestling fans and put a Ric Flair and an Austin and a Mick Foley and who else did we just do a second ago?
Michaels.
Yeah, Shawn Michaels. If you put them in the room and you put Chris in there with them, he would not seem nearly as large or grand as a person or a character. But there was something about the way that I was always impressed by the guy that could do like Arn Anderson. Never had to raise his voice, whatever. He'd look in that camera and say, so we're going to get in there and we're going to get it done. It was a very straightforward, very dry, but you knew he meant it. Mm. And I think that's where Chris comes from, the same place. Personality, A.
Razor.
Work rate, only because I'd worked with him. I'd seen him in the past when he would go, when he was in the AWA and the Diamond Stud. Certainly has the capacity to go, or had the capacity. But as of late and towards the end of his career and the bulk of his time on top, I'd say work rate was, B-. But when that said, when he wanted to go, he could go. He could do it. He had the ability. Promos, I personally just was never into the whole fake,
Cuban thing,
Cuban, whatever it was. It just seemed, and that's not a slap at him, it's a slap at the WWE. Just that whole cornball, cartoon character thing. Charisma, Scott did. He had the it factor of being able to go out and maintain a crowd's audience, an audience's attention rather. And personality.
What grade would you give him on the promos? You weren't a fan. But
on the
were they
promos,
totally the shits? Or
no, not totally the shits, but keep in mind they were totally written. So it's in that sense, because it was something that was just written and just basically reading off a script, I would say an F. I like the guys that, and again, that's a slap for him. That's what the WWF wanted him to do. I like the guys like Flair or New Jack. You have these guys that can get on there and look in the camera and say their piece and make the fans believe it. That to me is a promo. In personality, I think that he's when he had the character of machismo and all that kind of thing going on, that it gets right back to again the contrivedness of it, the canned aspect of it. I didn't like. So I would say a C at best on that.
All right, Sting.
Work rate, A minus, A. I've seen times where, and the reason I say that was when we were tag team champions, me and Steamboat, he and Vader were working for the NWA World Title or WCW World Title after us. And they didn't like having to follow us because Steamboat would want to go out and almost 90, put it in 50 plus, usually plus 55. And well, after seeing that, the crowd was exhausted. And if they had done the right thing, they could have followed that up by just taking, if they went in and put, they can't do it in the 5 or 6 minutes that they wanted to do, but if you could, we're willing to put the time in, they could have gone out there and got the fans back to the edge of their seat and excited. Flip it. After they complained and didn't want to follow the NWA tag team title, for the first time in the company's history, the world title match got put on before the world tag team title. And the first night that happened, Grizzly Smith came to us and, that big, funny way of talking. He said, "Ricky, anytime after 10, meaning take the match home anytime after 10. The crowd's done, they're hot, they're tired, ready to go home. Just go out there and put some time in and leave." Well, Steamboat was way too professional for that. If he was going to take a paycheck, he was going to earn the damn thing and make sure the fans got entertained in the process. So he would routinely take us out there and go 50, 55 plus minutes. And, for the first 10 minutes, the crowds, some of them left, the rest of them. But about 15 minutes in, you start to see, from this to a little bit of interest is starting to come up a little bit. About 20, 25 minutes in, you'd see them go, "Oh, okay, now I'm starting to get." And by 30 minutes in, they were hook, line, and sinker back on the end of the line. The Steamboat would then start the match there. With all the other stuff, even though the match had technically been started, that's where it really started, was once we got those fans back interested again, it was time to go to the races.
And Sting?
His promos, to me, just very dry. The whole, Lonesome Crow thing or whatever it is. Charisma, A+. Sting can command an audience just with a turn and a look. And personality, A+.
Lex?
Work rate, F. I mean, come on, it's promos, C. Charisma, it's hard for me to say if his career, was it charisma or was it just oozing arrogance, and I guess they're going to be made. So I guess in that sense, in charisma, he could go out there and command an audience, whether it was by his arrogance or whatever. So I'd say a B in that. And personality, he was the most condescending. And I've heard he's changed, and I'm glad for him, but he was the most condescending person. I'd have to say an F. Then.
Dreamer?
F. No, work rate. Tommy works hard. I'd say Tommy's a definite A. Promos. I'm going to say A-, but with that asterisk, ibid to what I said about Arn Anderson earlier. Tommy could go in when Tommy was serious, and it wasn't every time he did a promo, but when Tommy got down to brass tacks, and you pull that camera in tight on his face, and he'd say, "And I'm going to kick your ass," or whatever the poignant line was, you could feel what he was saying. He meant it. You could, and that came through. That's a very hard thing to evoke through a TV camera, and he was very good at that. Charisma, I'd say definitely an A. he could go out there in front of that audience. He had a bit of a kiss ass for my tastes, but Tommy connected to the audience, and his personality. Tommy's just a good guy, so I'd say A's across the board.
Raven.
Work rate, definitely an A when he wanted to go. He's very capable in the ring. His promos, even though I don't adhere to that kind of style, came across perfectly for his character. His character going out and doing a rant like a franchise or a Ric Flair wouldn't have worked. His should have been that slow, deliberate, cerebral, almost maniacal, and he did that perfectly. So promos definitely an A plus. Charisma, hard for a heel, because charisma to a heel is it's by the very nature we're supposed to be pissing the audience off. So how do you command an audience that's pissing off? But you can look at it in one move. When Raven would stop and he would do the pose, the crowd was either with him or booing him, either one, which means he had it. So definitely A. And personality, I think sometimes he got a little bit too much into the whole, lonesome crow thing, and sometimes got out there with those promos and stuff. They try to take it too far in a walk. It's one thing to go around the bases to loop it back around. Raven would sometimes take you out past Pluto before he bring you back. And the only person worse than that was the Ultimate Warrior.
Yep.
No.
So what score would that be on personality?
Personality B.
Okay, final exam. Who's the class valedictorian? Who was expelled from the list we went through?
Let's see. Who's expelled? I would say Lex is probably expelled.
Okay.
Class valedictorian. Can we scroll through them again?
Yeah, sure. Let's say we had Raven, Dreamer, Lex wouldn't be him, Sting, Razor, Jericho, Austin, Flair, Michaels, Foley. I'm going to say Foley.
There you go. Only because across the board, especially in the style that he did it, he commandeered a bit. Everybody said, "Look, he looks terrible. He's built like a pear. All these crazy things. He's not the prettiest guy, most handsome guy, whatever." But somehow he became, one of the biggest names in wrestling in the last 25 years, and that's purely to his ability.